All right, now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to proceed now to our next panel discussion on the topic of the future of sustainable supply chain, proposed and practicality. So without further ado, allow me to pass on the stage to our moderator. He is the Senior Advisor and Visiting Professor of Sustainability Leadership at Sassin School of Management and Managing Director of Sentio. So ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause for Mr. G.J. van der Zanden.
Thank you very much. The world is changing. The world is changing to more sustainable ways of producing and consuming. And the change is accelerating. Almost all countries in the world all governments in the world have committed to net zero. Those commitments are covering 88% of all the global greenhouse gas emissions already. And 65% of those commitments have been written into law. So this is very serious. Also, money is flowing in that direction. ESG finance has doubled only last year and is projected to make up 1/3 of all assets under management by the year 2025. Companies have also made commitments. Already 1/3 of the largest companies in the world have made net zero commitments. Those companies, they represent over $20 trillion of revenue. That is 5 times as much as all of the Asian countries' GDPs combined. All of that business is going to go towards net zero. And that means that supply chains for those companies will change radically over the coming years. This represents a tremendous opportunity for companies. Southeast Asia is slightly behind the rest of the world in this development, but there are many signs showing that things are picking up here as well. Also here, the capital available for venture capital and private equity going into sustainable causes has tripled last year. Consumers in surveys are showing that consumers are actually more concerned about health and environment than their counterparts from the Northern Hemisphere. So things are moving in the right direction here as well. In this session, we're going to explore how companies in Thailand and Southeast Asia can benefit from this movement that is happening in the world towards more sustainable supply chains. And with us, we have some fantastic speakers. We have Weenarin Lulitanonda. She describes herself as a divergent financial economist and sustainability advocate, formerly with the World Bank and now heading ThaiCan. We also have Kun Sriprapa Pecharamesri, advisor to the Institute of Human Rights and Peace Studies at Mahidol University. And Hee Chang Song. Hee Chang Song is assistant professor at Sassin, working on sustainable management and teaching mindful leadership. And he also studies Buddhism within a business context. And last but not least, we have Seta Tavisri, procurement executive from the Thai Beverage Group, who strives to build more sustainability initiatives under the Thailand Supply Chain Network. Welcome all, and thank you for being here. I would like to, first of all, I'd like to know a little bit more about the persons behind the big titles and the big initiatives. It would be great to hear more about what your personal motivation is behind what you're doing. And I wanted to start with you, Kun Weena. You have an economy and finance background, but you made the change to clean air. Can you explain how and especially why you made the change to clean air?
Oh, okay. First of all, thank you for having me as a panelist in this session. Actually, I didn't abandon finance per se. Why am I involved in clean air? Because we all need to breathe. It's as simple as that. It's the very basics of life. And I was personally affected by the terrible air pollution that happened here in Bangkok 5 years ago. And I know people up north have been severely affected by it for the last 15 years. If you can't breathe the air, if you don't have clean air to breathe, nothing else you're trying to do makes any difference anymore, because that's the very essence of life. So that's about it. Hope I answered that question.
No, that's great. Dr. Sri Prabha, your focus is on human rights. What motivated you to focus on this topic?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for having me here. Many years ago, actually since 1977, I was recruited to work on the rights of refugees. And that was until 1981, when you saw the influx of refugees from Indochina due to political conflicts and genocide by Khmer Rouge in Cambodia. Of course, I encountered hundreds of thousands of victims by then. And then I came to realize how much, people, a human being, can do against other people without any reasons, without even knowing them. So I start asking myself, and this brings me to human rights until now. I think we realize more and more as well that human rights violations could be committed by state and non-state actors, including business companies. And this is something that I have been working on for so many years, especially through human rights education at the university level.
Thank you very much. I remember when you introduced yourself and you said, I'm in human rights because I'm a human being. I think that...
I was saying to GJ that if I answer bluntly, I will be saying that, I was motivated by human rights only because I'm a human being, and that's it.
And it's the best thing to do, yeah, fantastic. Professor Hee-chan, you teach Buddhist values to business leaders. Can you explain why you chose that area?
Yeah, I'm teaching basically strategic management and organizational growth at business school, but basically the traditional business subject, right? But I think in the PhD program, as a PhD program, more interested in some very deeper level of human being. It's like human right or something. But I find the key term, the human desire. And at business school, we always teach, hey, you never satisfied, you do something more and more. And we talked about growth. But I was a little bit uncomfortable with that logic. Always we talked about growth. So I find that the key term is human desire. And the question is, who study human desire like a scholar? I find that Buddhist monks, they study desire. So that's why I come to Buddhist temple in Thailand to study desire. What's the nature of desire? How can we view desire in the business context? But I think my problem is more like too much deep into that study. So I was a monk in Thailand. My parents really worry about that. They worry about if I become really the monk forever. But I think my journey is to find something between Buddhism and business and at the business school.
Thank you. And I think it's a fantastic sweet spot. I think many business leaders are actually questioning the purpose of the business that they're driving. So this is an area where they can reflect. Right? Kunseta, you manage procurement for one of Thailand's biggest groups.
Yes.
What is your personal motivation and your relationship with sustainability?
Personally, I've been following on this sustainability for quite some time. But things that happen is that I looking at the procurement for the whole group, ThaiBev, across the countries, and mainly this is a journey for us right now, especially what we call sustainable procurement. How be able to take this to the next level. One of the things that we have in our system on the business partner, more than 3,000 locally in Thailand. And this is the mission that we would like to make them understand what are the important relevance that we have to work on. And also, I have been working with the network, which I will talk to you more on that, as a working team with the co-founders. So this is something that I believe that will help our society in the future. Yeah.
Thank you for these answers. Now we know a little bit more about your motivation and why you're driving your topics. Let's have a look at let's try to connect this to the business world, right? In 2021, the World Economic Forum came out with a report which said that the biggest risks to business and humanity, 4 of the 5 biggest risks that they identified were related to climate and environment. I have them written down here. They were extreme weather, climate action failure, human environmental damage, and biodiversity loss. Those were the risks to business and humanity that were most likely to happen. And they also looked at which of these risks would have the highest impact if they happened. And 4 of the top 6 risks with the highest impact were also climate and environment related. The only other risk that made it into the top was because it was 2021, it was COVID time. So the other risk was infectious diseases. But it's clear that climate and environment are becoming a very material risk to business and to society. And if we do not mitigate those risks today, the cost of mitigating them later on will be much higher. If we don't take measures today, later on it will cost us a lot more money to solve the problems. So there are different ways to think about sustainability or the role of business in sustainability. Companies that think about compliance, they might have an attitude where they just don't want to break the law, they don't want to get in trouble, right? There might be companies that are just there managing their risks. In those situations, often sustainability becomes an expense, right? But there's also another way of looking at sustainability, because sustainability actually is a way of saving money and saving resources. Sustainability can drive innovation in very important ways. It can open up whole new market segments, right? So there's actually a tremendous opportunity, a business opportunity that comes with sustainability. And I would like to explore that area a little bit more with you. And starting with Koen Setta, what would you say are the biggest incentives for Thai supply chain participants to take sustainability seriously? And what are the priorities that you see in the transition?
That there are 3 things that we are looking at the moment. I think, from the opportunity itself, is the consumer behavior has been changing rapidly, especially on the young, generations. As we are beverage companies here, and we need to make sure that we're able to follow that mega trend closely. For example, as the time comes, we need to change our packaging more eco-friendly. So those are the things that we have to think, in a long-term basis. The other thing is the government compliance that coming in, quite, rapidly. We see a lot of ESG impact in the past, 5 to 10 years coming. And also, as you know, we are embarking into 10-year of what we call BCG economies. And that means, the businesses and what we are as an operator to ensure that we're able to follow that guideline closely as well. And I think the other thing is, as myself also, we want to make sure that we educate our business partner and businesses here in Thailand that with these changes, we could, share the knowledge and practices that we have done, especially, what we have lesson learned on the, the global level, come down to local level. Yeah.
And what are some of the practical things that you do to help supply chain participants?
That's what happens, in our what we call Thailand Supply Chain Network. Luckily, we were started before the COVID. It started from our group CEO, Kun Thapana, and also among other 8 members of founder. A lot of big names, like banking would be Bangkok Bank, BJC. We have SCG here, GC. So name a few, those would be the 9 members that come along to talk on what else we could help our network to be stronger. can we really to share the knowledge of sustainabilities that we have endured in the past and the future, and also can we have a better collaborations. And also, we would like to take this opportunity to bring our network to different countries in ASEAN as well. So we are embarking to more of the network in Vietnam now. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Krun Sripapa, could you give us some more insight into the relationship between business and human rights? So how can businesses actually benefit from taking human rights seriously?
A very good question. I may have to refer to the UNGP, UN Guiding Principles, which said that the actions of business enterprises can affect people's enjoyment of their rights either positively or negatively. On the one hand, I think we cannot deny that business contributes a lot to economic development, technological advancement, employment, well-being, welfare of the people. Business have a significant impact on, of course, on our way of life on a daily basis. But then on another, we witness serious and systematic human rights violations being committed by business companies against workers, the use of child labor, damage to the environment, cause of climate change, just to name some. So all of these, in many ways, not only do not ensure equitable or equal development, but also not contribute to sustainable development that we are talking about today. In addition, in our digital world, digital era, business impact penetrate our home because finally, companies with an online presence may violate the rights of privacy and data protection. And I think these are something that we tend to forget. Okay. Benefits for what benefit business can have for human rights. I listed here some of them. Promoting worker rights, increase productivity and profitability. Respect for rights improves relations with local civil societies and communities, of course. A good human rights record enhance brand values and trust. And I think international companies like Thai Bev has that brand, and brand values is extremely important. Respecting human rights reduce regulatory risk because more and more in a number of countries, they come up with quite a number of regulations. And then the human rights are the key to what we call responsible supply chain management. So these are finally, the potential gains from improving human rights does include a financial benefit, but the overall returns go further than the financial benefit itself.
Yeah, I think the last thing you say is very true. It's not only because of the financial benefits, but it's because what we have to do. We have to protect human rights. And let me go over to Kun Weena again. Air pollution is a critical issue, especially in Bangkok. And it's inherently it's a structural problem, but it also connects to a much bigger global supply chain challenge. Could you explain a little bit more on this?
I'd like to answer that by segueing what Ajahn has just said, Sri Rapa has just said. In July of this year, actually, the UN General Assembly actually adopted a resolution that the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment is a human right. And that's huge, right? So what it does is actually it creates an obligation for the state to protect, respect, and fulfill this right for all its citizens. And that's critical. So when we talk about, going back to your specific question about the structural issues behind air pollution is an invisible killer. You don't see it with the naked eye. You can have PM 2.5 on a blue sky day. You don't see it. It goes straight into your bloodstream, and when it goes in, it doesn't come out. It's a structural problem because in Thailand and in many countries, actually, there isn't a single a responsible agency whose KPI is completely tied to resolving this. It's a very complex problem, and it's linked to the way we've developed as a country and probably globally as well. And the issue linked to the global supply chain is, if you look historically, is what has happened. If you look at the Industrial Revolution, that has resulted in a lot of environmental problems, right? So we've heard about, how London is called the Great Smog, right? And that's related to what's happened with air pollution issues out there. The US went through that as well, and they've cleaned it up with a Clean Air Act. The UK did the same thing. And what has happened, though, globally is that supply production has actually moved. So it's moved from the developed country to the developing country. And if you look at the map of air pollution quality around the world, you'd see the global north is very green. And when you look at the global south, you're looking at red, if not really dark red or black color. So that shows that is the supply linkages that I'm trying to draw out here. I hope that answers your question, GJ.
Yeah, thank you very much. The developed global north has exported its air pollution problem and is importing water from the global south as well. So the northern hemisphere is already making very serious progress in the transition to more sustainable ways of producing and consuming. Southeast Asian companies have been slower, and I'd like to explore that a little bit. Southeast Asia has been slower despite the fact that it's incredibly important for the region. This region holds 20% of the world's biodiversity. It is more exposed than any other region in the world to climate change and its impacts, and those climate change impacts, more extreme weather events, for instance, they disrupt supply chains, they disrupt food chains, and this is especially affecting marginal populations and farmers, of whom there are many here. Also, making the connection back to supply chains, this region is the fourth largest supply chain to the world. Right, so it is very important to protect that capacity. Swiss Re, which is a very large insurer, I think the world's largest insurer actually, they estimated that without action against climate change, Southeast Asian GDP could be reduced by up to 30% by 2050. That is a massive amount. So if the potential impact is so enormous, why are Southeast Asian companies slow in reacting to this very strategic trend? And I'd like to start with you, Dr. Hee-chan. Is this a matter of culture and values, or is there something else that prevents Southeast Asian companies from moving forward?
I think as a researcher, there are 4 elements that lead to corporate sustainable practice. The first one is mindset at the individual level. Usually we look at top management team and how top management team's mindset lead to corporate sustainability at the organizational level. The second one is organizational character, like firm size and firm age, and etc., etc. And third one is legal involvement at the country. And fourth thing is stakeholder pressures. So now the question is, if there is a strong the third sector, what we call the stakeholders, like a civic right group and NGOs, local NGOs, maybe social enterprise, and some other stakeholders that doesn't have legal authority or binding force that pressure the corporations, but more like ethical and moral pressure on it. So the question is, it's nowadays very active. The third sector is very active in Europe and North America. They're getting, the problem is they're more aggressive, but then they do their law in their involvement. But the question is, if their third sector is actually there at the South Asian context, if they do their laws and pressure corporations, even though it doesn't have legal force, do they do watchdog laws, and do they monitor corporations to force them to do more sustainable practice. Maybe that's so. At the end of the day, corporate sustainability practice is not only about top management team and something like inner practice. It's more like there should be some the third party that enforce them to do so. So, I lead many research on it. So if there's a strong third sector, it's actually there at Southeast Asia and broadly Asia. So that's probably the reason why they're a little bit slow, I think.
Kunseta, from your experience working with supply chains, what do you see are some of the typical challenges that supply chain players have to deal with that are slowing them down in their progress?
Yeah, I think in supply chain, we use the word efficiency, right? We always want to have more lean, efficient network. And I think what happened about 3 years ago, when we start this network, supply chain, and we have to move back a bit. We have to be resilient. So this is what we call resiliency for the past 3 years. That's why, we cannot really push forward that much on, to answer your question on, how we slow moving to this, sustainability issues. So it takes time to really, make everyone understand the relevancy of these, issues that we are working with. So again, with that, the network that we did, we help our businesses, small one, medium one. For example, the whole network, built one of the Gelco companies where we produce, everyone chip in, putting, the gel alcohol. For example, GC contribute the plastic to us. We contribute some alcohol and so on and so forth. So again, the challenges is that has been impacted quite rapidly in the past 3 years. So now we're coming out of COVID. So we have to become more from resiliency to efficiencies. So the challenge now is how we able to bring back these businesses to leverage them up. So in my network now, we contact a lot of finance institutions to help them on a different, package. For example, we work with BBL that will come with small, package from to come out for the businesses, and also we work with different partners to ensure that they're able to have a better finance in the future. And also, what's coming up is the green finance, sustainable, finance. So in the network itself, we will provide this package to our member.
I'm very glad that you take this approach that resilience in supply chains is more important than efficiency when we're trying to move towards more sustainable models. So thank you very much. So the good news, I guess, is that Southeast Asia is now also accelerating. 8 of the 10 Southeast Asian nations have committed to net zero. Private equity and venture capital moving into sustainable solutions has tripled last year. Southeast Asian consumers have indicated that they clearly want more sustainable options. It is not only about pricing, it is also about availability of options. So there are many signs that indicate that things could move faster here as well. And I wanted to explore that a little bit more with you. I wanted to explore what can Thai or Southeast Asian organizations do to better prepare themselves to capture the opportunities that come with the transition to more sustainable models. It's not only an expense, but there's an opportunity out there. Kurwina, I wanted to start with you. Many people mention the lack of regulation as a reason why sustainability transition is slow. But TAICAN actually developed a proposal for a clean air bill. What, in your opinion, needs to be changed to achieve more and quicker progress?
Let me take a step back and just introduce who Thailand CAN is. So Thailand CAN stands for Clean Air Network. Actually, if you go to the website thailandcan.org, all that information is there. So we are a citizen-driven group. We got together because of the problem of air pollution. We were trying to find someone who was trying to solve this problem systemically, and when we couldn't, we decided we needed to formulate this group. So we've got a interdisciplinary group of people. So I have environmental lawyers, I've got environmental economists, I've got medical experts on the team, I have mass communication experts, I've got air pollution scientists on the team, and many others. And we work collaboratively in a network. So what we have done is taken the EU process of pushing for legislation and bringing forth 3 colored concept papers. So there was a white paper, a blue paper, and a green paper. Quick run through. White paper talks about the overall issues related to air pollution. Blue paper is talking about the impact of air pollution in Thailand. There was a study done, and the cost of air pollution in Thailand is almost 12% of GDP. And that was just PM10 based on 2019 data. So it is costing us a lot. The final one is actually a green paper, and I've actually brought it out very quickly just to show how thick it is, because this is the solutions paper. So this is what it takes to resolve the problem, and we're talking about air pollution. Going back to the specific questions in terms of what it takes, what we've done is this is all leading to a citizen-led clean air bill, which is currently now sitting with Kun Prayut, our Prime Minister, to decide whether he will push it for deliberation or not. Now, I think the thing that it takes is to create the right incentive structures for all actors, all economic actors. So by this, I mean the state, I mean corporate citizens, and intentionally using the word citizen as well, corporate citizens as well as civil society, to be part and parcel of this problem and to solve the problem together. So we don't believe in command and control. So in this legislation, as in all proper environmental legislation, what you have is building in incentive structures for economic actors to do the right thing. So very specifically to the corporate sectors, for those who want to green your operations, there is a clean air fund in there, and it's funded through an additional excise tax. So it is costly. It is costly to transition into a more greener, cleaner operation. And that fund is specifically used to provide incentive structures for those who want to do so. And if those who don't, then the existing legislation will deal with all of that. So that is how it deals with incentivizing the right actions needed from the corporate side. And then it also helps civil society. So as an ordinary citizen, if you're sick and you don't know, you have no leeway to figure out what the sourcing is. It will help you do that. It will help in terms of medical costs and also in litigation, right? So it is providing the right incentive structure for economic actors to do what's needed to bring clean air, because this is a basic right for all of us. Hope that answers the question.
Absolutely.
Very interesting. I will contact you after the event.
Sure, happy to do that.
Need more loans.
Now, this sounds like a wonderful structure, because, as you said, 12% of GDP lost because of air pollution. That is a massive societal cost. And how do you bring that down to action by societal actors? That is the key challenge here. And it sounds like you're well on your way of proposing the right way of doing that.
We need a lot more push. We have a change campaigns. If anybody wants to support this, go to our website and you can provide your views on this as well.
All right. Kunsetta, you introduced the Thai supply chain network. What do you do, or what can you do to help the smaller supply chain participants move faster in their transition?
Yeah, in our network, we started about 3 years ago, and there are 2 parts, business and non-businesses. In businesses, we help small, medium-sized companies to be able to have more opportunity to buy and sell on the network. With that, we were doing this for 3 years, and last year, almost a year now, that we felt that we need to digitize the platform itself. So we create what we call thailandsupplychain.com for our member. So that platform itself helps the SME to list their product and services, advertise online, and also on the big brothers like us and a conglomerate as a buyers come in to source on that platform from that SMEs to make sure that we have this ecosystem in place. And also we embed the circular economy businesses into that as well. For non-businesses also, we create what we call a sharing knowledge platforms. means, for today we will have broadcast, event to our member. And also we invite a lot of members themselves to come to different events. Just happened to be that the past year it was COVID, on the last wave. So we did online activities with our members. Educate, communicate, and connect. So those has been ongoing efforts. So in the future itself, we will have more on-the-ground activities to really, move this forward in a faster fashion. Yeah.
So you're offering a lot of knowledge exchange and platforms and services, but what would you ask from organizations in supply chains that are not yet joining you?
Usually we will be on the different events, and also actually the platform itself is for free. It's no cost to them. What's good about the network that and the member itself also, we also qualifying this member. Not just everybody can come in, so we want to make sure that they are with us. They are purposely in this network to ensure that not only businesses but also in our goal of sustainability. Yeah. So this is how things that we try to promote. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Kun Sri Prabha, what steps would you recommend to companies that want to create new value through the human capital agenda?
One of the ways that I would be recommending is for companies to do what we call human rights due diligence. What it means by human rights due Does it work?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was saying that if I have something to recommend to the companies, then human rights due diligence would be the one. In many countries, especially in European countries, many of them have made human rights due diligence compulsory by law. But I don't see this in this region yet, in South Asia region yet. What it means by human rights due diligence, it refers to, and I quote the UNGP again, the process of identifying and addressing the human rights impacts of a business enterprise across its operations and products, and throughout its suppliers and business partners network. Human rights due diligence should include assessment of internal processes and systems as well as external engagement with groups potentially affected by its operation. So in short, human rights due diligence is a risk management tool that businesses undertake to identify, respond, mitigate, and prevent its adverse human rights impacts in their own operation and supply chain. I give you an example of Nike. I guess you have heard about Nike in the early 90s when there was discovered they were using is the sweatshops. And between 1996 1997, their stock price decreased for half. Then Nike started to be more innovative, especially when it comes to human rights. They have ambassador and some other things. Finally, within 9 years, the stock price of Nike has increased 400%. So it means that, when a company is doing human rights due diligence, they gain, as I mentioned earlier. What would be recommending for me? I would be recommending some steps for the companies to take in order to create the new values, to what I call not human capital agenda, but more about human rights agenda. And for business to do so, I found it quite interesting because in Thailand there are 77 companies, big companies in Thailand have signed up to Global Compact on Business and Human Rights, including ThaiBev and some others. What it means by that? It means that they are expected to fulfill their commitments. And in order to fulfill their commitments, It's not just about having the policy in place because it's not enough. So the step towards fulfilling or undertaking human rights due diligence is that it's like this commitment has to be conveyed, communicated, and educate. If I may use Kun Setha expression earlier, communicate, educate, especially throughout operations to lower level, not just policy level. The second thing that I think is also important is to enshrine the National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights, which is already in place in Thailand, the very first country in South Asia having adopted National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights. And then recognition of business and human rights as a relevant business case, because so far I think a large number of companies in Thailand do not make human rights a business case yet. Recognition of the existing evolving norms such as international human rights standards, ILO conventions, and of course the UNGP that I mentioned at the very beginning. The last one that I feel obliged to mention, and this is related to many of my friends who are actually being charged by the companies for exposing human rights violations that they have committed. So for companies to refrain from application of what we call SLAP, strategic litigation against human rights defenders. This is extremely serious because we feel that business should recognize the vital roles of human rights defenders that they are playing not only in Thailand but in the whole Southeast Asia. Acknowledging them that they are the watchdog. They are crucial into informing overall human rights strategies. So human rights due diligence process and design a kind of non-state actor grievance mechanism, and they are playing very important roles in ensuring human rights due diligence to be fulfilled by the companies.
Thank you. You mentioned the Nike example, and that's a clear example of how not only consumer-facing companies, but also companies further down in the supply chain will actually be watched. There are more and more watchdogs out there that will see if there are human rights violations, and consumers will react to that. So it's a very strong incentive. Finally, Professor Hee-chan, what would you say are some of the most important steps that that companies should take to bring about a sustainable mindset throughout the company, not only in the head of the chief sustainability executive?
Yeah, my answer is always some really abstract, I think very theoretical, maybe not necessarily practical, because I'm too much deep into the Buddhism. But maybe let me share my personal story, right? Because I grew up in Korea, and in Korea, it's a very competitive society. In positive terms, that's a good thing because there's many innovations going on. But the negative side, the byproduct of the hyper competition is there's always losers and winners, and people are really anxious about their, whatever, the mindset. So then I moved to Thailand. I spent more time in Buddhist temple, and I talked about all the corporate social responsibility and sustainability issues with even Buddhist monks. And I feel very comfortable because their way of thinking is really very much different from the culture that I grew up. We talked about in Thai and sabai, that the mindset is already, I think, is very much built in Thai society. So that's sort of shocking to me. Maybe it's not familiar to you guys, but it's shocking to me because I grew up in we talked about always competition and growth, never satisfied. But in Thailand, some things are slow, and we talked about sufficiency and middle paths. That's sort of different logics. I know many of you are not big fan of sufficiency economic philosophy, but at least to me, it's a very good way to developing our mindset. I think that's the point that I think more revised version of sufficiency economy. So what is the true middle path between or something, very, always talked about competition, something between hyper competition and slow the lifestyle. I think that's sort of mindset already I think the experience in Thai context. And it's really difficult to make it as a culture, right? But I think that's a top management team's role. And another element is, I think, the practice. Like how can we combine a moral aspect of corporate sustainability? Because if we all talked about just the moral side, nobody followed that. Because in reality, the business practice. So then how can we combine and integrate moral aspect and strategic aspect? And if there is an alignment between that, which is what we call business case of sustainability, it's a win-win in the policy that corporate leaders can foster. So I think there's two things. Alignment between the moral aspect and strategic aspect, and make it as a strategy. And second one is, I would say, because I'm a big fan of Buddhism and sufficiency economy, it's the middle path, sort of middle path minded. If people are sabai, there's no growth. We need at least some sort of competition should be going on. So there should be some middle path that we can pursue. I think that's the ideal sort of practice that we can pursue.
Thank you for sharing those insights. I see we have a few minutes left, so I'd like to make sure that we get some questions from the audience, if there are any questions. If there's any question, just raise your hand. In that case, I have a question, actually. So I think, first of all, there's a question in the back there. Can we get a microphone?
สวัสดีค่ะน้ำฝนค่ะ so thank you so much for sharing very great insight, and I know that you all have been working so much towards sustainability, and I was wondering from your point of view what have changed and what are things that is still the same since you started at the journey of sustainability work. Thank you.
Who would like to?
Let me go first. I think, I see sustainability is like transition period now. And the way we see it, it's not transition, it's called transformation. You have to change rapidly. And that's a word that people used to say, transformation is not destination, it's a journey. It's a long journey that we would like to ensure that people understand the relevancy of this. So I think the thing that I'm trying to do now is to be a better connect person, connect all the dots, as well as getting all the collaborations among what we call big brother help small brothers. As big conglomerate like us, we want to ensure that people understand that we cannot wait anymore. We have to put the action in place. Yeah.
Sri Papa.
Thank you. It's a very good question. I recall that the issues of business and human rights, are including human rights into business operations, was discussed many years ago. But only in 2011 that the UN came up with the guiding principle on business and human rights. And of course, all countries, including Thailand, have adopted. But then in order to ensure that these guiding principles, which is not a legally binding document, are properly implemented, we need, of course, cooperation, because it's based on cooperation from business sectors. What I found quite interesting, usually when we talk about human rights responsibility, it usually goes to the state, because state is there to protect, respect, and fulfill the rights of the people. But I think more and more companies are realizing that they are also having responsibility, which is a responsibility to protect the rights of workers, protect the rights of environment. We are talking about rights of environment, and many others, because without human rights, sustainability is not really guaranteed. So if you look at the 17 goals of ADG with 169 indicators, you might notice over 3/4 of them are based on what we call human rights-based approach. So sustainability is, as I said, is having very close link to the promotion, protection, and respect for human rights here. And as I said, I'm glad to see that companies like these companies are looking more at that. However, I just want to put a kind of footnote here that we see more and more that companies are adopting human rights discourse. But I don't want to see them just adopting at the discourse level, because I want to see it operational rather than just putting that in their policies. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Weena, do you have any final thought?
I guess just to add on to what people have said, I think the key change, I think it's a more awakened society. So for example, taking PM 2.5 issue, Thais were not aware of it because that data wasn't added into our air quality index until only about 4 years ago. So it's a new vocabulary. What changed was actually civil society complaining on social media. Yeah, so feed dragging, not including this in for 10 years by the state, it took 9 months after people complained. So yeah, so the power of civil society is very strong, and I think you can't fake it to make it anymore. So any corporate entity thinking of doing that can't actually get away with it as it could maybe in the past. So I think it holds everybody to account more. So I think that's probably the biggest change I've seen.
Thank you, Weena. And with that, we're getting towards the end of our talk. I want to thank you very much. It's been really interesting to hear insights from a practitioner, insights from maybe a more philosophical level, and from an activist level. And as you said, Kun Sri Prabha, it's time to maybe stop talking and start acting more. So let's do that. Thank you very much.
ค่ะขอเสียงปรบมือให้กับทุกท่านนะคะผู้ทรงคุณวุฒิของเราทุกท่านด้วยนะคะ Thank you very much to all of our excellencies